You know, there is no job description for the First Lady, and Mrs. Carter took full advantage of that, redefining the role, making it her own, and essentially creating the blueprint for the First Ladies after her who wanted to tackle their own issues. So I sat down one-on-one with someone who saw it all from inside the East Wing. There are few people who knew Rosalynn Carter as well as Kathy Cade.
I have been privileged to know her for almost 50 years.
In 1977, Mrs. Carter hired Kathy as part of the First Lady's staff. She remembers the interview well, as Mrs. Carter detailed a new White House job in charge of special projects that catered perfectly to her.
I need someone who's going to help me do research for me. I want someone who's going to study the various issues that are most important to the administration, brief me about that. So I think that the title should be Director of Projects, Issues, and Research.
It was the first position of its kind, and even though the long name has changed, the job still exists today. During her 4 years as First Lady, Kathy worked by her side.
So what was she like as a boss? You were with her whole time in the White House.
So she was the best boss I ever had. But in many ways, she wasn't a boss. It was like we were partners. And my role was really just to help her advance her agenda. And we did that together.
She had a front row seat to the power of influence Mrs. Carter had, noting many things in Washington started or ended with a call from the First Lady.
When I got word that the president was about to make a decision, and it might not be the decision that we were supporting, she picked up the phone and called her husband. I think in many ways people just don't realize how much influence she had, because so much of it was exercised privately.
She says the president trusted her implicitly. 6 months after he was inaugurated, he asked his wife to make a groundbreaking trip to Latin America. She visited 7 countries in a highly successful trip that laid the foundation for public policy and good relationships for years to come.
I'm going to convey all of this information that I have to Jimmy. In fact, I look forward to consulting closely with him on a regular basis.
The president trusted her political instincts. He knew that she would tell him the truth, whether he wanted to hear it or not.
Would there have been a President Carter without Rosalynn?
There is no way there would have been a President Carter without Rosalynn.
This week, as she reflects back on the life of her boss-turned-friend, Kathy says she's at peace, that the woman who fought for that very thing across the world now feels it herself.
She lived a long and wonderful life, and she is at peace, and we should all just take this opportunity to celebrate her and her many accomplishments.
And you know, the other thing Mrs. Carter changed, press coverage of the First Lady. 40, 50 years ago, there was a women's page, which is where you would find coverage of the First Lady. They would talk about what she wore or what she served at tea. But Mrs. Carter changed that, especially on her trip to Latin America. She insisted that journalists who were experienced at covering substantive issues travel with her, so the focus was on the issues. And that changed the trajectory of press coverage from there on. Faith.
Christy, such a powerful story. And I just love the fact, and when you speak to people out here in Plains, it's echoed that Mrs. Carter, she didn't just go up there to choose a plate decoration or what type of tea is going to be served at the dinner. She went there to work. She had her office in the East Wing. She hired her staff, as you told in your story, and she had a mission. She had a passion. And she made it happen, and it's just incredible to hear. Christy, thank you so much for bringing us that incredible story. We want to let you all know that we will be carrying this coverage live on 11 Alive Plus starting at 10:30 this morning. You will be able to see us out here as people start to come out and line the streets. We'll take the service live at 11 a.m. That's going to be a private ceremony with some members of the family and invited friends there over at Maranatha Baptist Church. And then we're going to take you through the motorcade as it comes down Church Street to the Carter's family home for a final farewell. So it's going to be beautiful. We hope you join us on 11 Alive Plus on YouTube.